Good afternoon. My name is Sally Berkery and I'm the Managing Director of CEW UK. Thank you so much for joining us for what will be our final webinar of 2021, and what a corker it is. As part of our ongoing Founders Series, I'm really delighted to welcome Jane Wurwand, co-founder of Dermalogica and Found, entrepreneur, CEW Lifetime Achiever, and now the author of her newly launched book, Skin in the Game, which I would really encourage you all to buy. I'm kind of matching it today, the cover, deliberately. You should buy a copy of it if you haven't got it already. It's unputdownable. I don't know if that's a word. I hope it is. We'll go with it. And it's a really fresh take on entrepreneurship and life lessons. And I have to admit that ever since starting reading earlier this week, I'm definitely trying to be more Jane. I had the pleasure of meeting Jane earlier this week, and I'm so happy she's given over some of her time to the CEW members for this session this afternoon, where she'll be in conversation with broadcaster extraordinaire Nicola Bond, beauty expert, host of the wonderful Outspoken Beauty podcast, and a friend of CEW, and a generally lovely person who I'm sure most of you will know. At the end of the discussion, we will have some time for questions, so please do pop them in the Q&A panel at the bottom. Please try not to put them in the chat. If you do, it's fine, but Q&A would be better, and we will try and get to them. And this is your chance to ask Jane the question you've always wanted to ask, so please don't be shy. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you both, and thank you all once again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Sally. Thank you. This is the third time I have interviewed Jane, and it's such an honour, absolute honour. Every time has, well, the other two times have been wonderful, and I'm so excited that you're going to get a chance to hear her speaking. So welcome, Jane. You're in your hotel room, aren't you?
I know. So I you know, it's always the way, isn't it? You know, if you only knew what is juggling around, it's all hectic. I talk about that in the book as well. You know, you have a big messy life, you just kind of organize it. So I fully expected to have a ring light and be all professionally set up. And of course, that went to a completely different hotel. It's still not here. So then I positioned myself by a window in a sitting area, but the cord wouldn't stretch, and I'm on a, you know, there's international adapter, all the rest of it. So now I'm in my bedroom, the lovely background, with a table lamp here giving me light because it's getting darker outside. And I've moved everything off the bed, so you don't have to look at any kind of mess. And I tried to use a blur background or a lovely virtual background of California or something, and none of them are working. So here I am. That's my bed. I'm not even going to show you that side of the room because it's very messy. And I'm so excited to be with you.
I think it looks very grand. You look like you might be in Buckingham Palace, like the Queen, your beautiful bedroom. I kind of want to be there. It's very, very lovely. Jane, there's so much to get through, and I just have a feeling there are going to be so many questions and answers. And really, I'm going to start at the very beginning. Can you just tell us, and this is a difficult one because it's a very long story, but just tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get from young Jane, and the young Jane we meet in the book, the really young Jane, to the Jane I have sitting here right now?
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Well, same Jane. I mean, listen, you know, one thing that doesn't change, everything changes except, you know, core who you are, your authentic self. And that was one of my reasons for writing Skin in the Game, is to sort of share, you know, warts and all, fully authentic self. And it's not a straight line to get from here to there in your career or in your life or in your relationships or in your parenting or anything else. It's convoluted, it's messy, and it takes unexpected turns. However, what I've learned is just like a dot-to-dot puzzle that we used to join up, you know, when we were kids. That was my favorite kind of puzzle. All the dots, you're looking at them on the page, but you can't see what they're showing you until you start to connect them. And when you start to connect them, you realize, oh my gosh, each one of those dots was part of this puzzle. And that's what I sort of paint in the book. It's not linear. It's not, you know, my life chronologically or Dermalogica chronologically. It's actually rather like a life well lived. It comes in different stages and different stories are shared. Part memoir, part business book, part how to be, you know, an entrepreneur. We self-funded on $14,000, never gave away any equity, and how to be sort of the best parent you can be, which might be, you know, pretty shocking, but you know what, it's still fine. It's the best you can do. It's fine. I was raised by a mum who was widowed at age 38 with 4 children to raise on her own. I was 2 years old. And I learned something really special, actually, just this week about my life. And that was, my sisters came up to stay with me, my 3 older sisters, and I gave them each a copy of the book, which they liked very much. And because they're older than me by several years, they could tell me everything about the photographs that I'd used. So right in the front of the book, there's a photograph of me aged 2 years old. And this is a few months before my dad passed away. And I don't really have a memory of this. But what my sisters shared to me, which I'm so excited to know, my dad took that photo. And I never knew that. So now it completely, kind of changed the context of that photograph for me. So, life continues to surprise. So my dad passed away very suddenly. My mum had a nurse's training she could fall back on and kept our family together. And so the 5 most important words that were maybe ever said to me was my mum saying, learn how to do something. You must have a skill set to fall back on. So at age 13, I got a Saturday job, quite illegally, I must say, because you're supposed to be 15 and a half to get a Saturday job. But I got a Saturday job at the local hair salon in Poole, Dorset, where I grew up. And I was born in Edinburgh, but we'd moved to Poole by then. And I fell in love with the industry. Not right away, because my first job for a few years was doing the laundry and sorting out the hair clippings from the week and then cleaning the wax pots and all that kind of thing. 15 and a half, I got promoted to shampoo girl, which was my official title, very proud. And I've spent my life in this industry. And I went on to study skincare straight from high school, grammar school, and then became a makeup artist for Mary Quant. Realized I didn't want to be in what I saw as the beauty part of the industry, makeup, hair, nails. I really wanted to focus on skin. And that's always been a definer for me. Emigrated to South Africa, lived there for 4 years, then emigrated to America in 1983. And when I got there, I realized that there was no industry of professional skincare, as crazy as that seemed. And so it is all in the book. I decided to start an education program for skin therapists to kind of teach them to be skin therapists. And 3 years later, that turned into the product line Dermalogica because of my students asking what products should be used.
I love how you've condensed your story. What you did, and somebody else who'd ended up in America, maybe with your credentials, they may not have had the foresight to see that gap in the market. You were there and you thought, do you know what? And this is the great thing about entrepreneurs, is you see, right, that's missing. And do you know what? I've got the guts to make that happen. And you were still young then. Like, you must have had a lot of confidence to do that.
I was 24, which seems absolutely ridiculous, doesn't it? I was thinking the other day, I've got a 22-year-old and a 27-year-old, and I still think of them as my babies. But yeah, I was 24. But here's the thing, it wasn't that I was so smart or that I had a big plan. I had no plan B. So this had to work. I had to figure out how I was going to feed myself and stay in the country and, get a job. So it wasn't so much about being full of confidence. It was about having courage. And what I talk about also in the book is bravery is not about a lack of fear. Bravery is about being able to function even when you are scared. Yeah. And so I think, because such a lot had happened to me as a child, I always had this sort of motivating mantra in my head that the worst thing that I could imagine had already happened to me and to my mum. Yeah. And to my sisters. And so I can figure this out. I mean, I can figure it out. And so I talk a lot about that in the book. How do you figure stuff out when you haven't got a clue? None of us know what we're doing until the first time we do it. Any entrepreneur that says to you, oh, I had it all figured out, my game plan, they're not probably a true entrepreneur. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing, but I did know that I had a skill set that was really helpful to people. I knew I had learned a skill set I was good at. I knew that it was something people wanted. I was pretty sure and knew that I could get good at it. I knew I loved it. And I hoped I could get paid for it. And I think I do a whole diagram, like a Venn diagram in the book, of how you figure out what it is you're meant to be doing. And that's really the thing, because whatever it is we love to do, it's not just a passion. It's got to pay the rent, unless you've got some kind of a trust fund you're falling back on. I didn't. Couldn't just be something I love to do. It had to be, what do I love to do? What am I good at? What could I be better at? Do people want it? And can I get paid for it? And it's sort of like an exercise that I talk about, because I've used it in many, many situations. And that's sort of been, the way I figured it out. And that gave me the confidence, I guess, because I was sure that I had ticked the boxes.
Yeah, you had all the learning there, and then you applied it. And what's interesting, I think a lot of people don't realize, and you did just touch upon that, is that Dermalogica, it did not start as a product range at all. It started as those people you were training, and you were filling a gap in the market, but you also, and I know you hate this word, but I'm going to say it, you empowered a lot of people. A lot.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, you're right. I don't like that word. The reason I don't like it, I mean, it's a fantastic word, but the reason I don't like it, it's so often used, especially to people who identify as women, around this idea of, I will bestow on you, my wisdom, which I think is a bit condescending. We all have the power. I say in the book, everything you need is already inside you. But I feel very privileged and honoured to have had an opportunity to maybe unlock some of that, and sort of say, hey, you're more than enough, you're plenty, bring yourself big, bring your big messy self to whatever you're doing. Your authenticity is your superpower. And so that I feel really grateful for. And yes, we're an education company with a great product. We're not a product company that also happens to have great education. And that's always been our North Star. Dermalogica comes at everything from, can we defend it by explaining it? Is there a need for this product? Is it going to be helpful in more than one way to other people? And can we defend it and stand behind it? And that comes from education. So if it's a gimmick or a fad, or we made a mistake, I remember we launched a self-tanner at one point, and I thought, this is ridiculous. It's not true to who we are. Right. I don't care. It doesn't matter whether you're tanned or not. It doesn't matter. That's not, color of your skin is not important in any regard. So we just continued it sort of in a hot minute. And so it's okay. You can make a misstep and then you step back. But that's the difference to me between a brand and a product. A product is, could be great, could be very useful, but a brand has a voice, and a brand has a position, and a brand hopefully has a purpose, and a brand has certain things they will do and certain things they won't do. And what I talk about in the book as well is how you create a brand identity, and how do you start with what the bigger reason for your brand is. And how do you develop a language for the brand? And it all starts with, who is your brand? Not what is your product. We've all got cleansers. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, our cleansers are better than your cleansers, although, of course I believe they are because I'm the founder. But let's just say all our cleansers are exactly as fabulous as each other. That is not enough to make a successful brand that stays the distance for over 35 years, and we're in over 106 countries. It has to be more than that. And once you develop your brand voice and your brand identity, and even if you're working in a company and you're not the entrepreneur, but you're what I call the intrapreneur, you're inside someone else's company, but you're charged with being creative. Yeah. Once you develop that brand identity and that voice, everything else starts to become a lot easier, because you start to say, I know what Dermalogica would say, and I know what it wouldn't. I know that Dermalogica doesn't use the word beauty. We use the word skin health and skincare. I know that we don't call ourselves beauty therapists or estheticians. We call ourselves skin therapists, because we feel our work is like massage therapy or physical therapy. It has an actual result. So all these things, small details, actually inform the bigger identity of the brand. And things become much easier when you've nailed that down, because it starts to speak for itself. And I think that's exactly what happened with Dermalogica. And I talk about, how do you get there, and where do you start with that? and then what is important to keep going, because it's so easy to get distracted.
Yes, and I think that is whoever you are, like, and what you've done since the very beginning. You've had your belief system, you've set out what you stand for, and that has, I mean, apart from your tan, has it's never deviated. It's still that company, and that's lovely. And it was very forward thinking, of course. I mean, everything you did was so ahead of its time, and now it still stands today as, you know, one of the leaders. So it's yeah, it's really, really exciting. Now we've talked about your book, you've mentioned your book. I know there's a bit of a story behind the process of writing your book. Who is that book for in your mind? Is it for everyone? Is it for entrepreneurs? Is it for industry insiders? Who do you want to get, and what do you want people to get out of it?
Yeah, thanks. So I you know, I'd love to tell you that I had this all nailed down when I started writing the book. I didn't. In fact, and I talk about this again, I can't talk about everything in this book. I talk about how I had an idea for a first book that I thought was really, really good. And it was about skill set training and apprenticeships. I mean, I know it sounds a bit boring now, but I was really, you know, lit up about it. Yeah. And I also thought, I can't write a book because I don't know how to write a book. So I hired a ghostwriter. And that didn't pan out. So the ghostwriter was fantastic, but I went to New York to find an agent, and they said, this doesn't sound like you at all. And I realized, okay, they said, you've got to write the book. So I thought, okay, scrap that idea. Paid the ghostwriter and said, I've got to have to do this myself. Second book, I decided it's going to be about entrepreneurship. I'm going to do, how do you start, grow, seed a business? And I'm going to do it like a lifespan of a person. And that book I was going to call, well, the working title was Bleed Grey, just because of Dermalogica. Anyway, then I went to New York, back to New York from Los Angeles, to pitch it to publishers with my agent that I now had. And as I'm in literally a final meeting with one of the publishers, I just suddenly realized, this is not my book. This is a pretty good book, but this is not my book. What is it that only I can tell the story of? Anyone else can write an entrepreneurship book. Someone else can write a book about you know, apprenticeships, and what can I write about that would be unique? And I always think about that with any product we develop. What can we develop that would be unique? And I put a pause on it, and I said, I'm going to write a different book, which is what this one became. So you asked me, who is it for? So the first thing HarperCollins, who's the publisher, asked me, who is your target market? And I understand that, because in marketing, we always talk about who's your target market. And I could have spun out a whole lot of demographics or data, or, you know, Gen X indicates that this would be the person, or whatever. It would have all sounded good, but it wasn't true. So I said to them, I don't know. I know it's a book for people who are trying to balance work and life, and there is no such thing. It's about resilience. So how do we figure that thing out? And I know it's a book about people who believe they could start their own business, but don't quite know, is this the right time? And but that's not exactly who it's for. And then I know it's about people who are feeling stuck, and they say, I need a reset. I need some kind of I'm just not living my biggest life. I just feel like there's something else I should be doing. And HarperCollins, you know, bless them, kind of said, okay. But what really became apparent as I was writing the book, and especially now, and it's one of the reasons I believe in timing and the universe and magical thinking, this is actually, it's got all those things in it that I just mentioned, but this is actually a book for people that are sitting and saying, I've just been through 18 months or 2 years of a complete mind flip in my life.
Yeah.
We're in a political revolution, a social revolution, a gender revolution, a climate revolution, a life revolution, a work revolution. What the heck am I meant to be doing now? And that's who it's written for. So I know the book launched a month ago in the States, and that's been overwhelmingly the feedback. Oh my gosh, Jane, I think you wrote this for me. I'm not going back to the job I had, or I want to go back to the job I have. I love it, but I've got to make a change around flexibility. Or I always wanted to start my business, and you know what? I did it during COVID. Now, do I keep doing that, or do I go back to where I've got, you know, health benefits and salary? Yeah. That's who it's for. So I kind of do think it's for everyone, because I think we're all there now.
It's got, and even like forgetting all the business side, it's got bits like, don't be bored. There's always something interesting to do with your life. Have an amazing meal, go and see some different music. So it's just little life things that even, I was reading it, I was like, Jane is so right. Why don't I just do something a little bit different tonight and I'll feel great for it. So it's a life guide as well as for business. I think it's just got everything. Everyone needs to read it. I truly believe that. And it's kind of, I always say when I first met you, you came on the podcast, you helped me make a big career decision. And I think that was only after meeting you for 20 minutes or whatever. So imagine reading the whole book. Brilliant. Now, look, we're going to talk more about Dermalogica and about the book, but I just want to discuss all the proceeds from your book are going to something else you've created, which is called Found. And it's incredible. For those of us who don't know about it, it's absolutely amazing. Can you just tell us a bit about Found?
Yeah. So, what built Dermalogica were local entrepreneurs, small businesses, local salons, the salons in your high street.
Jane's Wi-Fi. Is your Wi-Fi? You're back now. Your Wi-Fi
always with us.
Your Wi-Fi went a little bit, but you were saying that you the kind of local places helped you with Dermalogica, right?
Yeah. So that's who built our business. And even though we've got retail partners now, all of whom have a skin therapist there in the location, it's always been the small business, the local entrepreneur that's been the backbone of who we are. That was my story. I got my first job at a local salon. I am an entrepreneur. So I wanted to sort of my next room, as I call it, my next stage. I wanted to really do something that could recognize that contribution, the importance of local businesses. So we started a non-profit initiative. It's called Found, because it's about making sure those local businesses are seen and found by us. And we don't just think of Amazon as the first place to shop, but maybe also the local, mechanic, salon, florist, dog groomer, whatever. And we started a nonprofit called Found. We're working with over 15,000 local entrepreneurs. Everything's in the book about it. And all the proceeds, everything, 100% from the book are going to fund and support, educate and connect local entrepreneurs in every industry, not just the industry that gave me my start and built my success, but every industry you can imagine. And I share some of those stories. And if you go to our website, which is www.found.org, you will be able to link through and see the stories of our entrepreneurs.
It's brilliant. And I know that we discussed recently the idea of those small businesses being the places where lonely people also go and gather. They're the hub of the community, and we need them. We don't need kind of faceless places. We need those community hubs. So I think it's absolutely brilliant cause. We're going to go back to you now. This is a big question, but I think it's one. I think we all meet huge challenges in our careers, and I know you've had some. What's been your biggest?
Oh gosh. Well, it's so hard to separate a career from a life. I mean, I suppose you could just talk. It's funny because when I was writing the book, I thought, okay, I've got to write about this piece in my career. And then I thought, but no one's going to understand why I did that unless I say I was in this really bad relationship. I was in a bad marriage. And so I'm going to have to tell that story as well. So it's all connected. It's like the connect the dots. So I guess in my life, my big challenge, so many. I mean, of course I could my childhood then, but not really. I had a great childhood. I think of it it was terrific. But a bad first marriage. Then I think about I've emigrated twice to different countries where I didn't know anybody. In Korea, I think definitely landing in the United States, and there was no industry that I had trained for. The professional industry only had a license in 7 states out of the 50. That was a big challenge. Literally had to sort of invent the industry. Then we started Dermalogica in 1986, pre-internet. pre-cell phone, pre all of that. So honestly, the launch of the internet, I mean, how do you navigate a business that's entirely bricks and mortar, literally, and human hands
Yes.
in bricks and mortar? And how do you can that business be navigated to keeping that and yet still be digital? I mean, we never saw what's happening now with social media when the internet started. We were busy trying to wonder if we should have a homepage. Yeah, there was no Windows. There was no Windows or any of that. So all of that. And the answer is nothing is static. It's all the time. Children, just when you thought you had your routine going, they flipping change something, and now they're waking up at 6 a.m. and they're not having a nap anymore. And
Yes.
now they're not eating different food that you can, warm up quickly. They want your food. And it's, God, I just had that all worked out. Now I got to figure it out again. That's life.
Yes.
So, whatever, I don't even know what my challenges are going to be next year, because who saw the pandemic 2 years ago? I was celebrating at New Year's Eve 2019, going into 2020. I was celebrating what a bloody awful year 2019 had been, and we're going into 2020. And we were so excited in the States that would be our election year and we would have the chance to make a change. We had no idea the pandemic was around the corner. And so you've got to be adaptable and embrace change and be flexible, and don't ever, fall in love with your own sort of whoever you think you are, because you've got to be able to change and be flexible in a minute.
Yeah, go along with the circumstances of life that you cannot control,
Yeah.
which is very hard. I think most of us like to be in control of our lives and our environment, but actually, as you said, the pandemic proved that you can't be.
Yeah, and here's the thing, you cannot control anything that happens to you in life, but we can all control our response to it.
Yeah.
So you are always in control of how you respond. And so don't react. There's a big difference between reacting and responding. If your doctor said to you, you're having a reaction to this medicine, that's not good. And if they said you're responding to this medicine, you'd feel good about that. So always think, in any difficult situation, what is my response to this? And if you need a minute, if you need a week, you can always say to that other person, that's really interesting. I need to take a minute, or I need to take a week to really respond to that carefully, because it's I've got to give it some thought.
It's good advice, really good advice, especially for someone like me. I tend to run into things like a bull in a china shop. So I think taking that step back. Has there been a moment in your career, and I know, some people never have this moment, when you just thought, oh my goodness, things with this company, with Dermalogica, are doing brilliantly. This is my moment. Or was it a gradual growth?
Well, at the first time you sell a product, the very first product, you think, oh my God, this is fantastic. Somebody likes my cleanser. Oh my God, that feels great. It's all along the way. We launched at a trade show January 1986, and we couldn't even afford to make the product. I mean, I tell these stories. How do you make a product when you can't even pay a chemist? So trust me, it's all in the book. And I'm not just saying that to push the book. I'm saying it because it's a long story. But we figured out, we launched the product, and we only had enough money to sort of make bench samples with a contract manufacturer. We owned the formulas. That's the number one lesson I learned. You must own your formulas. I didn't think so to begin with. We were forced into it by a chemist who refused to release the formulas until we paid them and bought them. So we had to figure that out. But it was such a blessing. I thought that was catastrophic because we didn't have any money and we had to launch, and we needed those formulas to run them. But that catastrophe actually turned into be such a gift, because we owned our formulas from the beginning. If we had not, once the product started to be successful, I mean, the price would have gone up and up and up. I mean, so all those small things that you think are catastrophic actually often great things. So we launched with just enough money to do bench samples. We then, this was January 86, we asked for an upfront check, back in the days of checks, of $1,500 for a minimum opening order with a ship date in March, which is really cheeky, $1,500, and nobody even knows how to say the product, let alone they like the product. But I'd already seeded the market with what I guess we would call influencers now, professional skin therapists who I had trained, who were excited about the product. So we hoped we would open 10 accounts in the 3 days of the trade show. And we opened 10 accounts in the first 3 hours. And when that happened, I thought, okay, if they don't change their mind between now and March when we ship it, I think we've got something good happening. And then we did $1 million in our first year.
Oh my gosh.
I couldn't even get my mind around that. And I just thought, oh my God, now we've got a new problem. How do we keep up with production? How do we scale up? You know, how do we scale up and not go out of stock and not lose? So it's issues all the way along the way. And I guess even now, I will tell you, even now, the other day I was on a flight from LA to Heathrow, and the woman kind of across the aisle from me pulled out a travel size of antioxidant Hydro Mist, and she misted it and tucked it in. And I thought, oh, people like my product. I'm so happy. I thought, oh my gosh, it's not a house of cards. I think we might actually have a real business. And,
oh, Jane, that's ridiculous. You've got imposter syndrome still.
No, because I think everyone should think it's the best product in the world. I do not have imposter syndrome, even though that's very common and we all have it at certain times. But sometimes the smallest things can reassure you deeply that you got something good going on.
Yes, I can see. And I imagine, I mean, it's like if I ever saw someone listening to my podcast, to see somebody using your product that you made, it's like, oh, this is happening. And you're not looking at it from your office, you are there with that person. I think that's it's magnificent.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Now, this is a question for you. How has the industry changed for you? Because skincare is mind-blowing these days. When you first launched that you were the leaders in what you were doing. Now, I mean, it's just everywhere. What's going on? How's the industry changed? What's next? I mean, what are you foreseeing?
It's so great. I mean, I love it. I love all of it. I mean, I worked so bloody hard to carve out this niche for skincare being separate from makeup and separate from, you know, people used to say things to me like, I don't need a cleanser. I don't wear makeup. Especially people who maybe have been identified as or identified as men. You know, I don't need that. My wife uses that. This kind of nonsense. Well, you've got skin. What are you talking about? That's like saying my wife uses toothpaste. I don't need to. What are you talking about? You've got teeth. So so many years I felt like we were sort of shouting in the dark, and yet we continued to do it because I knew what we were saying was right. It was true. And so that's what happens when you're first to market in certain regards. You're evangelical, then people figure it out. That's all good. It's all about how it's meant to be. So what's changed is, first of all, when I used to go with my box of products to New York and try and persuade anyone to write about the product who would, because we couldn't afford any advertising, print advertising. I kept being told, well, you know, we only write a skincare article every sort of quarter. We don't do one every issue, and we've already done one this year, so we're not doing another. That's all changed. Now it's all about skincare. Yeah. My industry didn't exist. That's changed. All 50 of the states in America have a license, and our industry is the greatest job creator for people, you know, especially women, in the world. So we contributed $28 billion into the UK economy 2019. So that's why I was so peed off, as you know, that bars, betting shops and barbers were allowed to open before professional skincare salons. And don't worry, I made my displeasure clear to anyone that would listen. Oh, yeah. So that's, everything has changed in that regard. But also now, of course, products. We couldn't make a spray sunblock when we were developing the product. We wanted one we couldn't do it because we didn't and don't use SD alcohol. And at that time, you would have had to have used alcohol to solubilize the sunscreen or sunblock chemical. So all of that's changed. And so our formulas have changed, our product has changed. We've always been more well known for what we leave out. We've never formulated with mineral oil, lanolin, SD alcohol, fragrance, color, formaldehyde.
Which is, sorry to interrupt you, which is amazing that you had that knowledge in the 80s. I mean, who knew anything like that in the 80s?
Well, I'll tell you why I did. I have an allergy to lanolin. I can't wear wool sweaters. I'll just itch my neck off. I have an allergy to lanolin and fragrance and many preservatives, and artificial color would cause me to break out in comedones, blackheads. So that was sort of very self-serving. I just thought, I can't launch a product that I can't use. And I knew all those things because as a skin therapist, I had used the products literally with my bare hands. Yeah. And I knew what was triggering, and yet ingredients weren't listed. There was no mandatory ingredient listing. So when we launched in the UK, people were saying, what are you talking about? How do I know if my product has any of these in? And I said, well, you don't right now, but you will, because ingredient listing must become mandatory globally. So you ask about what's changed, everything. Now we have the internet, we have new ingredients available to us, we have new packaging. We're pushing very hard right now on sustainable packaging. Yeah. And trust me, that might mean that our pumps don't work quite as well as the old ones used to, because we're going to be first to market, because we're not using the metal spring and the ball bearings that give you that lovely deep but are not sustainable. So we're going to be using different pumps, and that will improve, and we'll all get better, and we'll all be in them eventually. So this is what happens when you are prepared to lead and you see a responsibility in that. So I see now, for example, with the internet, we've got what I call skin enthusiasts, which I love. Listen, what was I listening to the other day? Oh, I've heard it before. I heard it years ago. I'm putting, Preparation H, which is a hemorrhoidal product, around my eyes. I think it's great. I heard that, back in the day, but it's back again, all right. Now, the point is that's meant for your bottom, not your eyes. So, don't get too excited. But I love enthusiasm for anything. And we've got skin enthusiasts who are online and makeup enthusiasts. Great. And let's not confuse that with a licensed or qualified skin therapist. And don't confuse a skin therapist with a dermatologist. And don't confuse them with a plastic surgeon or a cardiologist. We've all got our lanes, and it's all interwoven. We all need each other at different times. Yes. And so I think we just keep that in mind. And as things change, we must embrace. We must include everyone at the table. I don't ever want to be, when I came into this industry, there were these sort of doyens of the professional industry, and they were revered, and they all had their secrets. It was a secret formula from their uncle in Bulgaria. Yeah. It was a secret thing, a secret ingredient that, only, I don't like that. I like the democratization that we've seen of skincare. I don't want skin treatments to be, for wealthy white people. It's nonsense. We've got to include everyone in the mix. Everyone as a client, everyone as an entrepreneur, everyone as a voice. We've all got a voice and something to say, and we're all smart enough to figure out what's going to work for us. So I trust that, and I think that we've got to open up the doors and get as many fresh voices and fresh faces and fresh people, however they identify. We have to get it all in the mix, because that's what makes it richer and deeper and a hell of a lot more fun.
Yeah, it really does. So fun. Oh, love it. I bet everyone, it's so sad we can't see the audience, but I bet everybody is just like already feeling so motivated by you. I know I am. Every time I speak to you, I just learn new things. And this is you're an inspiration for skincare professionals and entrepreneurs around the world. What is your hope and your advice for people who, as you say in the book, want to be the entrepreneurs of their own lives?
Oh, yeah, I do say that a lot, because I don't ever want us to think, entrepreneur means you have to have money or you have to get funding and you start a business. Entrepreneur really means, for me, we see something that we think could be improved or changed, and we want to do something about it. So you can apply that to a business, but you can also apply it to a social impact. We see a problem, we have a horrific issue and problem. It's not a problem, just an issue of homelessness and unhoused people in Los Angeles. And therefore, I think we should all be the entrepreneurs of that. So it can be something that you wish to change. It can also be your life. Entrepreneurship. Sorry, you know how much I've been talking this week, Nicola.
You have. It's been probably the most you've ever talked in your life.
Oh my God. And I talk a lot anyway. Sorry. You can be, we are all, let's think of entrepreneurship as self-determination and wanting to make a change and wanting to make a difference. Well, just apply that to your life and say, I can be the entrepreneur, or I want to be the entrepreneur of my life. I want to design it. I want to influence it. I want to lead it. I want to see the change I wish could happen. Instead of wishing I want to do, doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to be whatever success means to you, but I'm going to give it a darn good try. Yeah. That's being an entrepreneur. So we can, all of us, be the entrepreneurs of our life. And sometimes it means making a hard decision about a choice we've already made, and maybe it needs to be changed, or maybe we've outgrown it. Maybe we've been in I talk about rooms, maybe we've been in that room of our life a little too long, and we're no longer growing in that room. So we have to leave that room and go to the next one. And the next one might be dark and lonely, and we're scared to go in it. But if we don't go in it, we'll never find out what was in there. So I give exercises about how do you kind of do that until it becomes almost second nature. Live your biggest life and don't ever shrink yourself. There will always be people that try and make you feel smaller. I never went to university. I went to what would be called beauty school. I don't have a degree in cosmetic chemistry. I'm not a business person, but I can do stuff and I could figure it out, and I can hire people that can help me in the areas that I might not be as strong. But where I'm strong, I'm going to double down on being as much of that as I can. And the one thing that no one can ever replicate is who you are. You are fully authentic. Just look at your fingerprints. I would give treatments, every day, many times a day. And just my fingerprints, I would think no one's ever had my fingerprints in the history of the planet. And no one will ever have them after I'm gone. That's how unique, not just your skin, that's how unique you are. Yeah. And so let's encourage that. I had a conversation earlier with a journalist who asked me, we were talking about, change in the world. And they said, oh my God, but can't we just agree that this is the word we use and we don't use it? I said, no, language is dynamic. We have to agree that it's all going to change, and we have to be adaptable. And I don't know any other, I'm 63. I just see that happening more and more, quicker and faster. And it's, it's bloody exciting, even though you may not know quite what's happening. It's all good. I mean, honestly, look at this. I'm in this hotel room on my cell phone, and we could be talking to people across the country and around the world. I mean, that is amazing.
Yeah.
And human touch is equally amazing. So it's not just one type of connection, it's human connection too.
I agree. And I think the moral with you is basically have what you stand by, have your rules, but be adaptable with them. And then that's kind of, I think, made you so successful. Having those two things working in tandem has been, have your value system, and then you can color outside the lines. You just got to know what it is you're doing it for. Yeah. Final question, and then we're going to do Q&As. We've got 3 questions already, but please, anything you want to ask, now is the moment. We have Jane, she's not going anywhere. So what's you talk about the rooms in your book, which people will know when they read it, lots of different rooms and exploring each one. What's your next room? What's the next chapter for you?
You know, I think it would be hubris. I think, you know, slightly arrogant to even know what my next chapter, what I hope it's going to be, is sharing whatever, you know, learnings I've had, whatever best practices I have, whatever success I've had, and really giving people a hand up and not a handout, and helping people, you know, live their biggest lives. That will be through a nonprofit found, but it will also be through continued engagement in the industry that gave me my success. And also, you know, my children's lives and learning from them. I learn much more from them than I think I've ever taught them. And my eldest child illustrated the book. They also helped me edit and make sure that I didn't come across too out of touch with what's reality in the world now. And I thank them for that every day. My youngest child, my daughter, is 22 years old, working for a nonprofit in Baltimore, Maryland, and one of the bravest people I know, constantly learning. And I'm so excited about our next, you know, generations, our next people that are coming up into the industry, who are going to bring with them freshness and newness. And I hope I can play a role in helping any of that. So I think my next room, I think it's pretty typical. Maybe as one gets older, you think, well, how do I give back? Yeah. And that's really what it's about. I'm never going to lie on a beach. I don't tan, so I'm never going to lie on a beach and just think, okay, I'm all that, because you're not. And anyway, you don't know how long you've got, so you better do it all while you can.
Oh, you are blimmin' amazing. Right, Q&A. Now, please do ask. So I'm going to start with Aya, who says, do companies only grow when they get investment?
No, we never had any investment. No, we self-funded. It takes longer, and it's certainly harder. There wasn't like a choice we had. I think if someone had offered us any money, we probably would have taken it. And listen, when you become successful, everyone wants to give you money. There's no shortage of people that want to invest in you because you've got what they call a proven business model. But most entrepreneurs self-fund $28,000. So what's that? Like £18,000 on 3 credit cards. And they hope to hell they can start paying them off before, you know, they go into bankruptcy. So that's typical. That's normal for salons. I'll tell you that now. I know that. We train 100,000 salons a year in the product. I know exactly how they start. So you're not getting investment. You know, if you've got an MBA and you've got a bunch of professors at your university who can help you maybe, you know, do the due diligence, you might go for first round funding, second round funding, all of that. That's not happening for most entrepreneurs. So no, you can grow. We were able to grow because we were in an industry, the professional salon industry, that was cash on delivery for the product. And it's still majority like that. It's not like the big retailers who want 120 days. Salons are cash on delivery. So it's no coincidence that many businesses got their start in salons, including, by the way, Estee Lauder. You know, one of the giants. Estee Lauder started selling her product in beauty salons in New York. Her phrase of how to describe them, not mine. And Leonard Lauder says, still gives credit, you know, that's what got his mum started. So you don't necessarily have investment, you self-fund. Then if you're offered investment, it's up to you. If you play well in the sandbox with other people, go ahead. Raymond and I knew that we didn't play well in the sandbox, and the vision that we had for our brand was very singular, and we didn't want to have to dilute it. And we were fortunate enough that we could self-fund. And so that's how we did it. But there's many, many ways to get funding too. I talk about some of that as well.
Yeah, it is all in the book. It's all in the book. And I'll tell you the story of when you actually took the next step with the business and you joined Unilever. That's one of my favorite stories in the book. I just love it. You were like the examiners when everyone took you out for dinner. It was it's brilliant, Jane. It's brilliant.
I have a rule, as you know, that I won't do any business with anyone I don't want to have dinner with.
Yes.
especially a partner or somebody who's investing in your company or acquiring your company, because guess what? You're going to be sitting down for a lot more than dinners. So
Yes.
if there's a problem with dinner, you've got a much bigger problem with the relationship.
I think that is a great ethos for life. Another question, how do you measure your own success, and has this changed over time? That's a really good question.
Yeah, I think a measurement of success does change, because to begin with, success is, can I pay my rent? Then I talk about hunting down the sides of my sofa when I was an apprentice, and if I found any money, was I going to buy milk for tea, or was I going to buy cigarettes? And you know, I smoked when I was an apprentice. I have not smoked since I was 22 years old, but so that was success then. I think it's this hierarchy of need. Success, I think, to begin with, is a roof over your head, perhaps, a family, and to love and be loved, and then potentially, money, at least having enough to feel comfortable, and then maybe it's travel. I mean, whatever it might be, buying the latest clothes or buying any clothes. I think for me now, because I'm so grateful to have ticked a lot of those boxes. Success is, how much of a contribution can I make? I want to feel relevant. I want to feel needed. I want to feel useful, helpful. So success for me is, and I don't say giving back, I don't just mean financially, I mean in all the ways that are possible to give back. And I think when you find your purpose and you find your bigger why am I here? And I talk about finding that. I think you're onto something that's important, and probably you could define as success.
Yeah. The other questions we've had, actually, I feel like we've answered during our talk. So I think unless there's any more questions, we will probably wrap it up there. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. There's plenty more of it in the book and in your career story. And what an honor to have interviewed you 3 times. So thank you, CEW, as well, for allowing me to do this.
Of course, I want to thank CEW for all their support and help. And I used to look at CEW and the people that would win the different awards, and I used to think, wow, I really hope to spend enough time in the industry to get to that level of recognition. And it happens, and I'm so grateful that we've got an industry body that recognizes everybody, and let's continue to do that. And just thank you very much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much, Jane. Are you go and relax in your hotel room?
Thank you very much. Thanks everybody.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.